Welcome back. In this video, we're going to use Photoshop to create a bit of an advertisement in a way. It's kind of a Instagram story lead kind of image. And we'll focus on something that's very popular in Vancouver, and that is real estate. So we'll sort of create a little bit of a real estate advertisement here. So first thing we're going to do, create new here. And we're going to do our settings here. So we create new, we're going to do with a photo. And we'll just start with the default size at the moment, but then we're going to make some modifications to it. So just make sure you click on the default size there, and then we'll just call this, I guess, real estate ad. I don't know. We'll set the width and the height to pixels. Now make sure when you put these numbers in that you make sure they are in pixels. We're going to go opposite to the screen, so the height will be greater than the width. So 1920 by 1080 or 1080 width, 1920 height. Make sure that that's pixels. You don't want to make that centimeters or inches, or you're going to have a huge document. The resolution here, we're going to go into pixels per inch because that's sort of typical. For screen resolution, 72 pixels per inch is fine. RGB color is what's typical, the 8-bit. We talked a little bit before. The background, we'll just make that transparent. I don't know why that's always defaults to white, but anyways, we'll make it transparent there. And then we'll just keep this color profile, and then we're fine, square pixels. Okay, so we can create that, and we've got this little artboard right here. So first thing that we'll do is create sort of a background color and then a background pattern here. And so if you go into your layers here, your layer adjustments, the top three, and you can see they're sort of separated out, solid color, gradient, and pattern allow us to put a solid color in, a gradient, and a pattern. Amazing. So let's do a solid color first. We're just going to create an off-white color. Now, what's interesting here, and I'm going to talk a little bit about HSB, hue, saturation, and brightness. Hue, right, deals with basically the color there. So when you're on the hue, you can sort of move it over so you can find sort of the color you want. Then as you move left to right, you can see that the saturation is changing. So if I move horizontally, basically the H and the S, or H and B, stay the same, okay? And then your saturation, though, changes. So how much color is in it? And if you want to change the brightness, that is moving up and down. So you can sort of go 0 brightness, so it's basically black, and then 100% brightness, which sort of, blows out the color quite a bit. We just want a slightly off-white color here, probably. So I'm just going to come down somewhere around there. So the hue, right, sort of no saturation. The brightness is a little bit reduced, so I got a little bit of a gray color. Okay, now we're going to add a pattern, but before we do, we're going to sort of look to see if we can get some more patterns here. So if I go under Window and under Patterns, it brings us up here. Now you can see trees, grass, water. There's actually more patterns that we can find. So in this little menu right here, you should be able to find the legacy patterns and more. So click on that. There's legacy patterns, and there's the 2019 patterns, and then there's a bunch of other ones down there. Okay, and we're going to sort of take a look at those. Not here though. We'll pop that back to, what was it under before? Oh, I can't remember. Leave it in color there. I'm going to come down here, and then we'll be able to grab those patterns. So if I make that adjustment layer with a pattern, okay, so by default, it puts in these lovely leaves here. We can find more of them here. So there's our legacy patterns that we just brought up. Legacy patterns, and I think the default one's in here. And I am looking for this line. This is just a diagonal line. Now, it's really hard to see. You probably can't even see it on the screen, but there is a line that's gone in there. Now, I'm not saying that you have to do it with these lines. You could try different patterns, like there's dots, there's whatever else is there. You can feel free to use something else. Now, one thing I will do though with this, I'm going to choose this line. I'm going to change the scale. So I'm going to make them larger. So there's 300. So now it's a bit more of a, I don't know, it's not really a houndstooth, but it's sort of a better appearance there. And I'm just going to hit OK. So now I've got a bunch of lines across my screen, and that's just going to be sort of my background pattern. So the next thing we'll do is place that image. And so there's different ways. I mean, you can drag it in. There's also the idea of placing the image. So I'm going to go under File here and Place Embedded. And so then you can find your images. And I think I put this on my desktop here. House, there it is. I just click on house there, and it brings in the image. Now this image here, when we're happy with it, like we don't worry too much about its placement at the moment. That's a nice looking house. I'm just going to click there, right, the check mark, and then now it's placed in here, and you can see it's come in as a smart object. If you did want to do some serious like photoshopping to it, you would have to rasterize that layer. But with this, if we apply any filters or whatever else, right, we can sort of go back and modify them. So it's good to just keep it as a smart filter, or sorry, a smart object at the moment. So the next part is putting this image into a clipping mask. And so a clipping mask allows you sort of to conform the image to a specific shape. So that's what we'll do first, is we'll create a shape, and nothing too fancy here. We'll just make a circle. So I'm going to click on the pattern fill layer. I'm going to come down to my shapes here. Now you can come down and specifically choose ellipse. You can come under here, I think under here, the shape. Yeah, I guess that's the way to do it, right? Just sort of click on the ellipse tool here. Fill doesn't really matter, the fill color, because it will just get used up by the house image. But we do want to make sure that our stroke is not there. Again, nothing else really matters here. I'm going to draw this ellipse, and as you can sort of see here, I can draw out the edge. If I want to make sure it's a perfect circle, I can hold Shift down, and so now you can see it there. And if I want to move it, I can hold the space bar and then sort of put it around. So I kind of want it, something like that there, right? So it's kind of coming out part of it of the way, and so the house that's going to be underneath it is going to sort of fill up this region here. So the next thing I want to do is go back to that house and make it the full size. So if I click on this here, one thing I like to do is to make sure I've got the transform controls on so that I can see the edges, and I'm just going to drag this up till at least it's sort of close to the size of that circle. Okay, so, and I might have to sort of modify it a little bit after, but that's kind of the idea. Okay, so I'm going to say OK there. And then what I'm going to do is create a clipping mask. So I'm going to come over to the top layer and make sure that the house is above the ellipse here. So if I right click on that top layer, I can create the clipping mask. And what it does is it just sort of clips to the pixels that are in the layer below. And you see that little arrow there pointing towards it. So now, it's not all that great because there's not all that contrast. We might play around with the colors after, but you can see that that house has taken over that color. Now, if I need to move this over a little bit, right, that's the image there. If I need this one, sometimes it's a little tricky. I might just turn that off and move this over. Maybe something better like that. And then the house there, I can sort of move in, and then, yeah, something along those lines there. Again, it's kind of up to you, but just trying to give you the basic idea here. Now, if we want to give it a little bit more color than what we've got here, if you can come back down to the color one, and if you click on that, we can bring this up. Let's just say we want a bit more of a blue. Now, unfortunately, as you can see, nothing's changing. So what can we do? Well, you can play with the blend layers. So if we go to the one above, and then we come down here, we can sort of start to play with some of these and sort of see what's happening. So obviously we want to keep the pattern, but you can sort of see what you think looks good, and you sort of go through and you can see how they're working. So the screen's kind of interesting, or these ones where the color is actually coming through on the darker part, right? And then the overlay where it sort of lightens it up as well. So these take a little bit of getting used to in terms of how they work. Maybe something like that. I don't know. I'm not 100% convinced that this circle here, I wonder if I can just make that a little bit bigger. You see, you still make these adjustments. All right, I'm going to do something like that. And then obviously, okay, that's good. This picture below is not big enough, so I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Oops. There we are. Lovely house. Okay, so just, yeah, fitting that in a little bit better. Now I think what we'll do is we'll just do a little bit with layers and then start dealing with text here. But before we do that, let's just organize this little bit here. Now, what you can do, just as a little shortcut, if I hold Shift, I can grab both of those. If you press Control G, it will automatically group them. So then you can come in here, and this is sort of our background. Let's Spell that right, I guess I did. And there's your background there. And if you're really wanting to do it, especially get something a little bit more complex, you can color code them, right? So you can make that red. I'm going to do the same thing here. So, oops, before I do that, Control G to group them. And then we can give this a name. So this is sort of the house. And then so on. If you want to put a color on that, feel free as well. Okay. Now, the next thing is creating some shapes here and then putting some text into them. So what we'll do here is just put a little sort of a square box down here and then a little sort of for sale little star up here. So we're going to simply go into these shapes again here, and under one of these I'm going to do a rectangle, and I'm just going to drag it out here. And so there's our rectangle. Now in terms of our, let's just see, properties, here it is, and I think it's just part of it's missing. There we go. So you can just sort of move that up. There we go. So we can see everything of the properties of this. So you could set the precise size if you want it. The fill, probably a little bit too harsh of a color. So RGB, I'm just gonna, sure, I'll just take that blue maybe. I'm just trying to see where I can get my better colors. Recently used. Don't know if I can just go into here. I was just looking for a more darker blue. There it is there. Okay, I'm going to use that one there. You can also round the corners. This is very much like Illustrator that we'll get to. You can round the corners there. There are some options here to round those corners, and I think that's pretty good. Ooh, they've even got the Pathfinder here tool here. That's just like Illustrator. We'll see that later. So there, yeah, that's pretty good, I think, for that. I'm going to add another with the star here, and so I'm going to come back to my shapes and then choose. This time I'm going to choose the polygon tool. And I'm just going to draw something here. Now, it doesn't look very much like a star. And we come over here, but we've got a lot of options here. So on this, set the number of points. I'm going to increase that. And so you can right away see that it looks a bit more like a, a seal kind of thing. That's what we're looking for. And then what we'll do is we'll play with this ratio here. And then that sort of brings the inside and outside. So if we bring this down, where's my number here? There we are. And you can sort of see it brings in kind of a pattern like that. That might be too many. Let me just see. Oops, did that there. If we go back to that, maybe I'll reduce this number, see what happens. And maybe bring this up a little bit. Cancel, I keep wanting to move off of that. Sure, something a bit like that. Now the only other thing I want to do there is change its color. We'll make this a red, and I just sort of noticed there is the color up here. You're probably all saying, Mr. Fleming, change the color there. That's okay. So we could put a nice red color on that. That might be a little bit too bright, but just bring down the brightness. Yeah, there you go. Okay. Now we can sort of position these better, and maybe that's what we'll do almost last here. I think if I press Control A, it does everything, and I can hold Shift, and I've got this, well, I've got this selected. You can center it, so you might not have noticed it too much. If I move it over, well, I'm moving the whole thing now. Just a second, Control D. If I move this over, let's just make it more evident here, and then Control A. So I've sort of centered it. This is still highlighted. Up here, I can center things. So now that's centered in the frame. You could even center it to the whole document vertically as well. Obviously, I don't want to do that. But I'll just bring that, whoops, I got that again. So Control Z, Control D, just to deselect that. I'll just bring it straight down and then just do that again. Control A, and then just make sure that that is centered. Yeah, looks good. Okay, I think we'll stop this video here, and we just have a little bit of text to do, and then a few little creative things to make these things look a little bit better, just give them a little bit of a beveled edge on them.